Hello, my name is Robert Ortiz, and thanks for listening to Eyes on the Road, a podcast by Uplift Education, where we serve as a guide to navigating the college and career journey.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Eyes on the Road podcast, season 2, episode 2. My name is Camille Ehlers, and I am the official co-host this season.
Hey everyone, my name is Robert Ortiz, host of the Eyes on the Road podcast. Thanks for joining us. And Camille, you said it, this is our second episode of the season and super excited to have y'all here. And equally excited to have Camille join us this season as official co-host. There's a lot that we're talking about today around IB. And there may be some of you listening to this podcast right now and you're like, what is IB? I saw the title. I'm not really know what this is all about. If that's what you're thinking right now, you're at the right spot because I didn't know what IB was until coming on board with Uplift. And IB education is what every scholar goes through across the network, no matter which grade scholars are in, from pre-K all the way through 12th grade. And so we decided to dedicate today's episode to talking more about that.
I am so excited for this episode today. Like you, was unaware of the intricacies and the beauty of IB. I think knowing what it was in general and having done a little bit of research, but there's only so much you can learn without being in that conversation or without being in that space or without doing. But I've been so inspired from this conversation and hope that it does the same for our parents, family, scholars, and other Uplift staff who might be having those same thoughts around, what is an IB and what's it all about?
So we're excited to have this conversation with Francisco Estrada. He is a college counselor out at Uplift Heights. And so shout out to Heights if you're listening, and go see Mr. Estrada and give him a high five and kudos for being on today's podcast. And so we're excited to welcome him to the show and get to know a little bit more about him, but also to join us in this conversation of, understanding IB, its benefits, and what families can expect out of this type of education.
Francisco, we are so happy to have you here with us today. So if you could just start first with sharing a little bit about yourself, your background, and your role at Uplift.
Yeah, so thank you for having me on this program. I'm super excited to be here. So my name is Francisco Estrada. I'm currently one of the college counselors at Uplift Heights in Dallas. I'm going on my 8th year here at Uplift, serving our scholars. Previously, I was teaching at Summit for 7 years. So it was although it's sad to leave my Summit family, it's wonderful that I'm able to continue to serve our scholars and families as a college counselor. I'm originally from the El Paso area. I was born in Juarez, Mexico, but I was raised in El Paso. So I have a wonderful upbringing. El Paso was such a wonderful community. I definitely cherish my time there, which kind of gives me a unique perspective of having, the identity of a Mexican as well as an American, to see the struggle on one side and the success on the other. So you can kind of see this dichotomy of identities. So that definitely inspires the work that I do. So I'm really proud to serve not only my Hispanic scholars, but the scholars of all backgrounds.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So today we are talking about IB in the best ways that we can. And IB is short for International Baccalaureate. And Francisco, I know that you, in your time as being a teacher, you were a theory of knowledge teacher. And so, I would like to have you speak more to that, just what that class entails, how does it fit into the IB curriculum? But also if you could just give us a short overview of what IB is and, and then just kind of speaking to the value of it.
Sure. So I get asked, I would get asked this question from family and friends when I was teaching theory of knowledge. They're like, what is theory of knowledge? What do you teach? So I would always say, all right, guys, get ready. Because it took a little bit of time to kind of really convey what TOK is about, and it's not really a class. It's more like a learning journey, and it's just all about how you know, what you know, why. So it's understanding the world through questions and research, and it's so applicable. And I always like to think about what is IB. And I go to the mission statement of IB, and I think it's really poignant. So just the end of the mission statement. So the IB mission statement ends. These programs encourage students across the world to become active, compassionate, and lifelong learners who understand that other people with their differences can also be right. And I think that's profound. Because we have to respect others differences, and we have to be lifelong learners. And what we're doing now for our scholars is we're preparing them for jobs that may not exist, that have not been created yet. So the IB is able to instill and to foster creative learning, not only creativity but creative learning. And I think that's going to be a skill that's so paramount in our ever-changing world.
Yeah, no, that's great. And what makes, I think, Uplift unique is that all of our schools are IB schools. And from kinder to 12th grade, that scholar is receiving an IB education. IB, for short, stands for International Baccalaureate. And so when we say IB, you can know that that's what we're talking about. It is a global education. So there are students in various countries outside of North America who are part of schools and school systems where it is an IB school. And fun fact with Uplift is we are the second largest IB network in the United States. So that is huge. And it's a big deal for us and something that we're very proud of because for a lot of school districts, IB is a selective education. But at Uplift, we believe that every scholar is deserving of this type of education because it really does give scholars the advantage in their learning, and it gives them the advantage in being prepared for college, for careers, and beyond. And so there's a reason why this type of education is selective for a lot of school districts because it does give students an edge, essentially. But what we wanted to do is make that available for everyone to where, you know, you didn't feel like you were missing out on the best education that you can receive.
The IB program can definitely address all of those. I think what I would ask the scholar and the family is like, what are you interested in? What are your passions? It wouldn't matter what the answer would be. Let's say if they're interested in working on their truck, I could bring in the IB program and help them understand that there are connections to that. So whether it's, writing your TOK essay about that, whether it's looking at how how IB environmental systems can help understand combustion. So there's so many different connections that you can make because IB is rooted in the real world. So that's the first approach I would take. Then I would definitely mention and definitely stress the importance of if you graduate with the diploma, the DP, often it's called the DP, it is the diploma program. If they go through that 2-year program, successfully, they get 24 college credit hours here in the state of Texas. It is a state bill that was passed. So, I mean, that is amazing how much savings that would be for a family. You were talking thousands of dollars for something that is provided to all of our scholars. They also, some other statistics, the IB exam, if they're able to pass their IB exams, they earn college credit 86% of the time versus 49% if they just take the AP exams. They also have a higher graduation rate in 4-year institutions, 79% with an IB and 39% without an IB from the research. They also have a better grasp on the career field, as I mentioned, being able to dive into a multiplicity of different research opportunities and practical applications related to their school, but relating to the IB program. It gives them a really um, robust grasp on what is available for them. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of times we are preparing kids for jobs that have not been invented yet. So having this program can definitely foster that.
Yeah, you're reading my mind. I feel like answering questions in advance of me. I love when that happens. Like you're thinking of a question and you hit the nail right there. And I guess I have a lot of thoughts on some things you said, but my first reaction and just is like how has your experience with scholars because when you speak about it, it's like you're like that poetic it comes off as a poetic, like you're waxing poetic, or that term where it just comes off, and I can hear your passion for it. I can sense your interest and your expertise. But I often wonder, like, how, in your experience, right? I know you can't speak for all campuses, but particularly for campuses that are just now um, using or operating under the IB model, um, like how do scholars or how do you get scholars to see that value or find that value or be able to speak as passionately about their IB diploma if you have, or is there a strategy for it? Because what I found working with some of our alum is that those that have been able to pass the test and can utilize it to their advantage, they can do so. But those that may not have, they haven't necessarily been able to find that the way to like find that value or be able to communicate the value of the IB. So I know that's a long way to ask a question, but essentially just like what's your experience with like helping scholars be able to passionately speak about IB or find the value in the IB model?
Yeah, so that is definitely an important question. But again, I think it does start with the passion that the staff is able to convey. Uh, and the way that I'm able to communicate to the students is finding their passions, providing lots of opportunities for them, divergent ways to explore different whether it's artistic mediums, uh, culturally relevant reading. So there's a multiplicity of different things that we can do to kind of, and this is something that I can talk later, just providing more opportunities for our scholars to explore and to be introspective and to explore their passions. So yeah, no, but yeah, there's a ton of ideas going on in my head as far as how to address that.
Yeah. I think, you're pushing me to learn more about IB, and it relates to so many layers of our work. Listening to you talking and just kind of uplift having someone, just one person that can spark some of that movement and facilitate some of that training and conversations and be like passionately invested in it. My question in addition to that is just like if you have an experience that stands out with a scholar or an alum where you've seen the IB impact their learning, whether it was through like personal projects or through CAS or even just like longer term career development. If there's a story you could speak to or maybe kind of summarize for us, that'd be really cool to hear too.
Yeah, I do have some stories, and um, I look forward to hearing from my students. Last year was um, the first cycle that I went through, assessment cycle that I went through with my seniors. So I would love to see how their IB experience is coalescing in their college experiences right now, or career experiences. But I think back to some of the things that we did at school, some things we did at Summit, and then it made me think about one particular almost team building activity that we did with the junior class, and it was the first semester of the IB program that we were starting at Summit, and we decided to do what was called the Global Goals team building. So we split up the students in small groups, and we gave them each one of the global goals. So there's a list of 17, I believe, global goals that were established by leaders across the world that need to be addressed by 2050 for a more sustainable world. So we gave each group one of the global goals. We gave them a country and the GDP and resources of that country. So kind of the resources of that country. And a lot of them were very apprehensive at the beginning, like, I don't want to do this. This seems like it's going to be boring. But as we progressed through the day, they totally got into it and were so passionate. And by the time they were presenting, it was something that they really took pride in.
Yeah, I was gonna say firstly, again, pushing me to think deeper about making connections in our career development work. And I love that story you detailed about the questions. I think we, in terms like the questions for career or industry professionals about their work and how they can start to digest like some of that planning with those responses, and thinking about how we can make those connections in preparing for things like panels and career trips and informational interviews and job shadow days. I know a lot of our work has shifted virtually, but there's still such good opportunity to make those connections with like what you're learning, like you said, so doesn't feel siloed. So that although you may be experiencing a career trip or on a virtual career panel, how does this connect to some of the work that you've been doing in your other classes, or as you're preparing your resume? How do you pull and draw from all these passionate interests or courses or coursework you've done? So being really intentional about that. I think like to kind of like to frame the question though, is there a career, I would say maybe some workforce prep, or I know Road to College has now added this career piece. Is there any advice in terms of like how to make that connection to IB for scholars that are thinking about career plans, or like what advice would you give us as a new department here, like to help make those connections for scholars and alum?
I think that's a really wonderful question. With this virtual environment, it does offer some benefits of providing additional access to things that weren't normally allowed. So having panels, as you mentioned, and I think that's really cool that we're going to be doing that. I think that's really great to have, regular panels and interviews with diverse professionals within the communities that we work and serve. Also, thinking about our seniors. So if they end up going to their career path, which is wonderful, or the military pathway, which is also a great opportunity. Being able to handle that, getting a grip on time management, being self-starter, engaging in research, rigorous research. These are all skills that can translate to a plethora of career fields and post-secondary plans. and with CAS, with the Career Creativity, Action, and Service, which is our community service oriented program. Well, it's not ours; it's the IB. With that, it becomes something that's a personal journey, but also that benefits the community. So these are all core tenets of the IB that can transfer over to a multitude of different career paths.
Nice. Thank you for sharing. I'm over here taking notes. So yeah, I think that I love that that you mentioned that accomplishment, being able to vocalize that piece in your time management, all those things you mentioned is so, and CAS is just like all of that. I think is good to it. Even me, as I know they do these things, but how awesome or unique is that experience to be able to tell someone as they ask you those behavioral questions, right? Like everyone knows, we go through those interviews, we go through those personal statement processes, writing cover letters, writing resumes, like going in saying, man, I have this IB experience and it's very unique to our school. And so your teaching in your process of impressing or persuading or informing, and having them learn about you and not just hear like the regular answers that often become the reasons why people get jobs. It's like, wow, this is a really well-rounded, like you said, global citizen. We want them on our team, or we want to hire them, or we want to learn more about them. So yeah, definitely thank you for sharing that.
When, as we've been talking about careers and just like career development, as it relates to the workforce, and knowing that the workforce is changing, especially now with COVID, it's impacting the workforce, pushes us to be more virtual, and it's pushing remote work. But also there are jobs that have yet to be created that our scholars are going to be exposed to. It may look different than what it looks like now. So what are some of those skills that are developed through an IB education? Can you speak to those skill sets again, and where they'll show up?
I think creativity is an important skill in our ever-changing, in our dynamic world, but not just this idea of creativity as like an artistic expression. Creative thinking is important. Resilience. I think being resilient is important. Having coping skills, and these are all things that can be not necessarily taught but fostered through our systems and our practices. But also some of those more tangible skills is the communication piece, the research component. All of these interdisciplinary fields, they're strengthened through the IB program because it is this interconnected program. So I think those are some of the skills that can translate to a lot of diverse career fields. And maybe our scholars will be the ones that are going to be inventing these jobs, is what I like to think about.
Yeah, Francisco, thank you so much for being on the pod with us today. I think IB is a very complex thing to understand, but I also, on the flip side, with both of you, see the tremendous value that it has for our families and for our scholars. I think that for me, the more I understand IB, the more it makes sense that it's so complex, because the opportunities are really endless in every way. When we think about learning, when we think about personal development, understanding self and navigating the world in every space, what is gathered through an IB education shows up in all of those ways. Hey, thanks for listening to today's show. You may find the information we discussed on the description page of this episode. If you have a question or would like more information about what we discussed, please email us at rtpodcast@ib.edu. tcc@uplifteducation.org. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Eyes on the Road podcast, wherever you listen, so that you don't miss our next episode. And until then, be well and shine through.